Hello, this is David Lindsley. In this presentation, I'll talk about various ancient American artifacts and that many of them support descriptions given to us in the Book of Mormon. While there are ancient artifacts found throughout the country, in this video we're going to focus on the Michigan artifacts and the Burroughs Cave artifacts in southern Illinois. In Michigan, tens of thousands of inscribed slate, clay, and copper plates and other artifacts were found in 27 different counties between 1812 and 1919. These artifacts show that a once thriving civilization lived in the northern area of present-day United States. From a newspaper article in April 1982, a caver named Russell E. Burroughs, Colonel, retired, discovered an astounding cave in a remote valley in southern Illinois. The cave's walled-up entrance and its passages were buried in about 9 feet of silt. But in his explorations, Burroughs has found quantities of objects that cannot belong here, according to conventional historians. First, let's talk about the appearance of written language on the artifacts. Since we are correlating with information given in the Book of Mormon, what might we expect the language to look like? After almost a millennia of being in the Promised Land, the prophet Mormon records that the Nephites were still using a form of Egyptian in their writings. And now behold, we have written this record according to our knowledge in the characters which are called among us the Reformed Egyptian, being handed down and altered by us according to our manner of speech. This plate is a good example of the writing typically seen on the Michigan plates and clay tablets. The characters are a strange combination of some Egyptian-looking characters, some ancient Hebrew, and some completely unknown characters. This combination seems to fit the description that Mormon gave when he described the plates he was writing on. Here are 2 stones from the Burroughs Cave that show examples of writing. The so-called mystic symbol or name of God, which is so prevalent on the Michigan tablets, is also shown on both stones. Also, the much-seen Son of the Right Hand symbol is shown. Several plates in the Michigan collection show battle scenes between 2 distinct armies, as we can see by their different clothing and weapons. For comparison, how did Mormon describe the Nephite and Lamanite armies? And when the armies of the Lamanites saw that the people of Nephi, or that Moroni, had prepared his people with breastplates and with arm shields, yea, and also shields to defend their heads, and also they were dressed with thick clothing. Now the army of Zarahemnah was not prepared with any such thing. They had only their swords and their scimitars and their bows and their arrows, their stones and their slings, and they were naked, save it were a skin which was girded about their loins. This slate shows 2 opposing armies lined up facing each other. The soldiers on the left have knee-length tunics, helmets, and are armed with spears. The warriors on the right appear barely dressed, wearing feather headdresses and armed with bows and arrows. Here's another slate showing 2 opposing armies. The group on the left has helmets and spears and carries banners. The army on the right is wearing feather headdresses and also armed with spears. Here is another slate showing 2 armies. Here the main difference is the head covering shown on each army. And another. Again, the group on the left has helmets and bows, and while those on the right are wearing feather headdresses and armed with spears. The artifacts give us clear indications that 2 distinct armies battled each other, perhaps frequently. The Burroughs Cave stones have many depictions of people and warriors too. These warriors have helmets, long clothing, and weapons. Could these be Nephites? Now the heads of the Lamanites were shorn, and they were naked, save it were skin which was girded about their loins. Here are several stones from the Burrows Cave that seem to fit the description that Mormon had given of Lamanites. There is an interesting correlation between the clothing depicted on the Michigan plates and clothing described in the Book of Mormon. And it came to pass in the 8th year of the reign of Judges that the people of the church began to wax proud, and in all these things they were lifted up in the pride of their eyes, for they began to wear very costly apparel. Many of the drawings on the Michigan plate show incredibly elaborate robes and headdresses. In this example, I colorized a sampling of the more ornate images to highlight the details better. Here are a few more. Notice the indication of patterns in the fabric, and the elaborate detail on the hems, and the fine embroidery. Clearly, these examples shown are not simple homespun cloth, but fancy in style and perhaps color. There are many biblical scenes that are inscribed on American artifacts. While some can wonder how the inhabitants of North America knew about religious stories in ancient Israel, the Book of Mormon tells us that Nephites had records of past events and prophecies of the future. As an example from the Book of Mormon, the missionary Aaron teaches the Lamanite king, and it came to pass that when Aaron saw that the king would believe his words, he began from the creation of Adam, reading the scriptures unto the king, how God created man after his own image, and that God gave him commandments, and that because of transgression man had fallen. These are scenes from a large 4-foot-tall piece of slate showing stories from the Genesis in our Bible. God creates the earth, God creates the sun, moon, and animals, God creates Adam. Adam names the trees and flowers in the Garden of Eden. God creates Eve. God shows Adam and Eve the forbidden fruit of the tree of knowledge. An angel instructs Abraham to sacrifice Isaac. The angel stops him from sacrificing Isaac, and they return home. Infant Moses is placed into the river Nile. Moses is found, and Moses plays the serpent of brass on cross. Moses receives the 10 Commandments, and Moses uses staff to bring forth water from the rock. It looks like major stories from the Old Testament were known among this people, and they recorded them in pictures. Many of the Michigan plates depict stories of the creation, Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel, Noah and the Great Flood, the Tower of Babel, Joseph of Egypt, Abraham and Isaac, and Moses. And Moses made a serpent of brass and put it upon a pole. And it came to pass that if a serpent had bitten any man, when he beheld the serpent of brass, he lived. Here is the specific scene on a Michigan plate. Here is another slate artifact with the cross and serpent engraved on it, a very beautiful work of art. Burroughs cave stones also have biblical scenes. Here are 3 examples. Daniel in the lion's den, Moses and Pharaoh, David and Goliath. Some ancient artifacts also show images from the life and ministry of Jesus Christ. Wherefore, as I said unto you, it must needs be expedient that Christ should come among the Jews, among those who are the more wicked part of the world, and they shall crucify him. For thus it behoveth our God, and there is none other nation on earth that would crucify their God. Here is a clay tablet depicting the crucifixion of Jesus. There are soldiers in the background and women kneeling at the cross. A depiction of Jesus walking on water from the Burroughs Cave. The people who made these tablets clearly knew the prophecies about Jesus. The Book of Mormon says that the Nephites constructed buildings and roads, planted and harvested crops, and built ships. All of these require tools, especially metal tools. In the land of Nephi, the prophet Nephi and his people established a community with permanent structures and agriculture. And I did teach my people to build buildings, and to work in all manner of wood, and of iron, and of copper, and of brass, and of steel, and of gold, and of silver, etc. Later, in the Book of Mormon history, the Nephites built ships and obviously used tools in the construction process. And it came to pass that Hagoth built him an exceedingly large ship on the borders of the land Bountiful by the land Desolation, and launched it forth into the West Sea by the narrow neck which led into the land northward. Here are samples of the many copper tools found in Michigan. In 1830, the accepted scientific thought was that horses and the wheel did not exist in North America until after Europeans arrived in the 1500s. When the Book of Mormon was published, it was mocked because it mentions horses and chariots. Now when Lamoni had heard this, he caused that his servants should make ready his horses and his chariots. It is interesting that ancient records describe horses and chariots. This Michigan plate clearly shows a nicely drawn carriage or chariot pulled by horses. Here is a carriage that appears to be a funeral hearse being drawn by horses. A stone from the Burroughs Cave also shows a horse and chariot. Just like horses and chariots, it was accepted as fact in Joseph Smith's day that there weren't any elephants in North America, ancient or modern. If someone was trying to pass off fake artifacts as real, I don't think drawing something so obviously wrong as elephants would have been a very good idea. And yet, the Book of Mormon gives us truth about the ancient civilization of the Jaredites that wasn't commonly known. In Ether, and they also had horses and asses, and there were elephants and kurlams and kumams, all of which were useful unto man, and more especially the elephants and kurlams and kumams. Some have speculated that perhaps kurlams and kumams were mastodons and woolly mammoths. Those prehistoric animals may not have been in Joseph's vocabulary as he was translating the Book of Mormon, so he used the original untranslated words. There are many images of elephants on the Michigan plates. Here are a few. Here is an elephant from Burroughs Cave. This image shows the elephant wearing a riding saddle and harness. On the right are two metal coins with elephant heads. Another elephant from Burroughs Cave. This one is pulling a log or something similar. While digging along a dried-up riverbed in northern Florida, a team of paleontologists and volunteers from the Florida Museum of Natural History unearthed a collection of bones from an elephant species that lived in the region during the Miocene epoch. Fortunately, several of the ancient elephant skeletons recovered were virtually intact, including one skeleton from a full-grown adult. This gave paleontologists a unique opportunity to study the anatomy of a huge and fascinating creature that once freely roamed North America, just like modern elephants wander across Africa today. And in Michigan, 1901, Levi Wood, a Hillsdale County farmer, found an entire mastodon skeleton, including the contents of the 10,000-year-old animal's stomach, while digging a drainage ditch through a swamp on his land. The skeleton was on display at the U.S. National Museum in Washington, D.C. Mastodon bones discovered in Bellevue, Michigan. 2014. Preliminary examination indicates that the animal may have been butchered by humans, stated University of Michigan paleontologist Daniel Fisher. Over the years, there have been over 250 mammoths and mastodons found in Michigan. So much so that in 2002, the giant mastodon was named the official state fossil. This plate from the Michigan collection has it all: horses, chariot, and elephants. It shows a charging chariot and many soldiers throwing spears and chasing after elephants. Here is a line drawing. There are hunters ready with bows and arrows and with spears. The chariot driver has the horses at full gallop, which gives the scene great action. At the bottom is a fallen elephant, and at least 3 more on the right side being pursued. For fun, I recreated the scene in 3D. Adding color and dimension really made the scene pop for me, and helped me see a glimpse into the life of these people from so long ago. It's worth mentioning that a recent 2024 report by Popular Archaeology concluded that the ancient Meso-American people used only stone tools, had no chariots or wheeled vehicles, and no beasts of burden. Whereas the Book of Mormon mentions that the people had copper tools, iron, horses, elephants, other beasts of burden, chariots, and wagons with wheels, all of which are portrayed on the Michigan artifacts and Burroughs Cave stones. A letter by LeGrand Richards to Paul R. Cheeseman says, "I heard Brother Callis once say that when Joseph Smith received the plates, he got down on his knees before the Lord and said, 'Oh God, what will the world say?' And the voice of the Lord came to him, 'Fear not, I will cause the earth to testify the truth of these things.'" As more and more ancient artifacts in America are discovered, these words of the Lord are truly being fulfilled today as evidence of the truthfulness of the Book of Mormon, and that it took place where Joseph and others said, namely in North America. I've presented here just a taste of the enormous evidence that supports our prophets and scholars for a North American setting to the Book of Mormon. There are countless books, articles, and videos that give much more information than I can. If you want to know more, I recommend, as a starting point, you consider Wayne May's new magazine series called Land of Promise, Uncovering Ancient America. In each issue are dozens of articles by prominent authors and researchers such as Wayne May, Bruce Porter, Jonathan Neville, David Hocking, Kevin Price, and many others. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the information and material presented. We're grateful to Native American Betty Red Ant LaFontaine for providing the beautiful background music. Betty is an enthusiastic supporter of the Heartland model of the Book of Mormon.